I refusing to raise my wife's deceased sister's child. Hello, Reddit. This is probably the hardest post I've ever written. I know this place is full of stories about arguments, cheating, or disagreements with loved ones, but my situation goes beyond typical family issues. I'm not looking for pity, I just want to figure out, am I really selfish? Or am I just a guy worn out by suffering and pressure from those around me? My name is Daniel, I'm 35. I'm married to Claire, she's 33. We've been together for about 9 years. We have a stable life in the suburbs of Paris, decent jobs, an apartment, 2 cats, dreams for tomorrow. Everything seemed on track for a normal, calm future. Until that moment. Claire had an older sister, Emma. She was the complete opposite of my wife. If Claire is collected, calm, logical, then Emma was always spontaneous, loud, and frankly a bit reckless. She had a stormy past, tons of romances, debts, strange actions. But she had a kind heart. She could be chaotic but caring. 4 years ago, Emma had a daughter, Olivia. No one really knew the baby's father. Emma said he disappeared when she got pregnant. From the start, everything was tough. Emma scraped by from paycheck to paycheck, constantly turning to Claire for support. We helped financially with food. Sometimes I'd fix her shower or drive Olivia to kindergarten when Emma's car broke down. But never, not once, did the idea arise that we'd take on the role of parents for this girl. And then everything fell apart. 3 months ago, Emma died in a car accident. A drunk driver crashed into her car, and it was over instantly. When they called us from the clinic, Claire broke down. I was there when she stood in the hallway, all pale, phone in hand, just muttering, "No, no, this isn't true." I hugged her while she sobbed. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about anything except keeping her on her feet. The next days passed in a fog. Funeral, paperwork, shock, and in the middle of it all, a little Olivia who had just turned 4. She was left alone. Completely alone. At first, I didn't assume this would directly affect us. I thought some distant relative would show up, maybe a cousin's grandma, maybe social services would find temporary guardians. But Claire immediately declared, "We'll take her in." She said it confidently, without doubt. I stayed silent because I didn't know how to react. The first days after the ceremony, the girl lived with us. Small, scared, with a plush teddy bear that never left her hands. She didn't cry, she just stared into space. And every time I entered the room, she scooted away like I was a stranger. I tried to be friendly, bought her yogurts, videos, games, but it was useless, she didn't respond. Claire, on the other hand, fully immersed herself in caring. She didn't leave Olivia's side for a minute, tucked her into bed, stroked her head, sang lullabies. I watched them and felt a strange mix of pity, worry, and horror. Then the discussions about guardianship started. Social workers, forms, inspections, all by the book. And that's when I realized Claire wasn't planning to just temporarily shelter her niece. She was seriously intending to adopt her. When she first voiced it, I froze. "Wait, you really want us to raise her?" She looked at me like I'd said something horribly stupid. "Of course, who else do you think will do it? There's no one to take her, Daniel. That's my sister. That's her daughter." I know, I sighed. But remember, we had our own plans. We dreamed of trips, maybe having our own kid in a year or 2. "Plans can be postponed," she replied quietly, "but Olivia's fate can't." I fell silent, because objecting then seemed insensitive. But inside, everything turned upside down. Not because I hated Olivia, but because I wasn't prepared. I didn't want to become a father, especially suddenly, without options. Months dragged on. Olivia slowly settled into the apartment with the cats, with Claire. With me, not so much. She still flinched and it hurt. But the worst came later. Claire transformed. She fixated on the role of new mom for Olivia. She talked about her nonstop, called her my little one, our daughter. And every time I tried to bring up that we needed to weigh everything, she cut me off sharply. "You're just afraid of responsibilities." "No," I replied. "I'm afraid of ruining our lives if we rush into a decision we're not ready for." But in the end, I understood. For her, it was already decided. For her, it wasn't up for debate. 2 weeks ago, she brought forms from social services, said we needed to sign to speed up the process. I took the stylus, stared at those blanks, and realized that if I signed, game over. No way back. I looked at her and said, "Claire, I can't." She froze. "What do you mean, can't?" "I'm not ready to be a dad to someone else's girl, especially after what happened." She gradually paled. "Someone else's? You're serious? That's my sister's daughter." "Yes, but not yours and not mine." Silence fell in the room. Then she just got up and left. Since then, we've barely spoken. She sleeps with Olivia in the nursery, I in the living room. I'm not a villain, Reddit. I'm just exhausted. I've lost my wife in the emotional sense. She now exists for the little one I didn't choose. And now I'm wondering, maybe I really am a jerk. Maybe I should have just gone along and not made waves. After that conversation with the forms, everything went downhill. Claire ignored me for almost a month, only short remarks, food in the microwave, take out the trash. Olivia was still living with us, and I pretended everything was okay, but the tension in the apartment was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every morning I heard Claire helping Olivia get dressed, laughing with her, singing. And I caught myself thinking, when was the last time she was that happy with me? At work, I just stared at the monitor. Colleagues asked if everything was okay, and I brushed it off as burnt out. But the reality was, I no longer understood what was happening in my life. I married a woman I planned to start a family with, and now I existed with a woman who wouldn't even meet my eyes. One evening, coming back to the apartment, there was a lady from social services sitting in the living room. Claire introduced her. "This is Mrs. Lewis, our guardianship inspector." "Our?" It twisted inside me. We sat down, and Mrs. Lewis spoke politely, with a smile, but with that icy formality that gives you chills. "We sympathize with the loss of your sister. It's a heavy blow," she said. "But now the key is to provide Olivia with a stable, warm environment." I nodded. "Absolutely. Claire mentioned that you're both considering adoption." I glanced at Claire. She avoided my eyes. "We talked about it," I replied carefully. "Great," smiled Mrs. Lewis. "Then let me clarify details. You both understand this is a permanent commitment, not temporary care, but full legal parenthood." I nodded again, not knowing what to say. She continued, "Do you have your own children?" "No. Planning any." I wanted to say yes, but caught Claire's glance. Her eyes screamed, "Don't you dare." "Not sure," I muttered quietly. "Understood. Then we need to ensure you're psychologically ready to accept Olivia as a family member. It's critical for her." I forced a polite grimace, but inside it was boiling. When Mrs. Lewis left, I immediately said, "You told her we're considering adoption." Claire stood up, arms crossed. What was I supposed to say? That my husband doesn't want to help an orphan? That's unfair. I'm not wanting to help. I'm just not ready to become a father. Not ready. She's 4 years old, Daniel. She has no one. And we didn't have those plans. We just got to a stable income. We wanted to go to Spain this summer, remember? She snorted bitterly. "Yeah, sure, Spain. Sea, wine, and zero worries. Perfect scenario." "Enough sarcasm," I said wearily. "Then don't act like a selfish prick," she snapped. That phrase stuck in my brain for a long time. A couple months later, it got even worse. Claire slept with Olivia more often. They cooked together, walked, played. I was in my own apartment, but felt like an outsider. Sometimes I caught myself avoiding coming home. Stayed late at the office, stopped by a bar, just to not see this perfect duo of the new family where I had no role. One day, coming home late at night, I heard Claire telling Olivia a story. I froze at the door of the room. Her voice was tender, warm, the one I fell in love with. And then the night said, "I will always protect you." Olivia giggled. "Like you with me." "Yes, like me with you," whispered Claire. I stood in the shadows, listening, and something broke in my soul. I realized I've lost her. Maybe not forever, but the woman I lived with definitely. She's gone. A few days later, I decided on a conversation. Final, direct. When Olivia fell asleep, I said, "Claire, we need to sort everything out." She silently made herself coffee. I can't go on like this, I started. We don't even talk. Because you don't want to hear. No, because you don't want to listen to me. She sighed heavily. What do you expect to hear, Daniel? That I'll abandon my niece because it's more convenient for you. No, I want you to realize I can't become what you see in me. I can't pretend normality. This isn't pretending. This is humanity. This is sacrifice, Claire, and not just mine. You and I, we're no longer a couple. We're just roommates in one apartment, raising a little one I didn't choose. Her eyes glistened with tears. You talk about her like she's a burden. No, I whispered, but she's become a symbol of what we've lost. What exactly? Us, Claire, our life, you. She was silent for a long time, then said quietly, almost inaudibly, You know, I thought after everything we'd been through, you'd grow stronger. That you'd understand family isn't just DNA, it's a decision. And I thought family is when choices are made together, I replied. She closed her eyes. Apparently, you've already chosen. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the light in the nursery. Heard Olivia whimper in her sleep, and Claire quietly soothing her. And in my head it spun. Maybe I really am a monster. In the morning, Claire left with Olivia for kindergarten, and I stayed in the apartment. On the table lay the forms, those same guardianship blanks. I didn't want to look at them, but my eyes kept returning to the line, spouse's consent. She left it blank, waiting for me. I sat down, took the stylus, and suddenly felt tears flowing. Not loudly without noise, just sat quietly feeling drops roll down my face. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I'd become. By evening, Claire returned. I said, I consulted a lawyer. She tensed. What lawyer? On guardianship. He explained that if one spouse is against it, the process can't be completed. She paused, then nodded. Clear, so you've decided firmly. I'm just not ready, Claire. Then she exhaled. Then apparently I'll manage alone. After that evening when I said I couldn't and didn't want to raise her late sister's daughter, our apartment in Paris became a zone of silence. I sat in the chair, listening to Claire packing things, not saying a word. Every action echoed like gong strikes. I tried to speak, apologize, explain emotions, but words got stuck between pride and panic. Do you really think I'll swallow your refusal without consequences? She finally squeezed out without turning. Her tone trembled but was icy. I knew she was right, and in that moment I realized that refusing to raise wasn't just a personal opinion. For Claire, it was everything: memory of her sister, duty to family, her essence as a mother. And I, damn it, destroyed it. The next morning I tried calling. Phone ignored. Messages hung unread. Every time I saw her in the hallway, my heart ached, but she passed by. I seemed like a ghost in my own reality. After 7 days, I risked going to her parents. Knew it was dangerous, but needed to make sense of the breakup. Claire's mother, Mrs. Brown, opened the door, fingers clasped. Daniel, her tone was soft, almost sympathetic. She's not ready to talk, but I see how you're suffering. I spilled everything, hiding no doubts, fears, and barriers. She listened, nodded, but reproach flashed in her eyes, piercing through. She loves you, Daniel, but she lost her sister, and you need to realize. For her, this isn't just a girl. It's legacy, a vow to herself. I nodded, feeling the growing burden. I understood her, but what about myself? I didn't feel ready for such a load. But now I saw the price of refusal, not money, not work, but broken connection, trust, and an alternate life. A couple days later, Claire called. Her voice was weak with a note of grief. Daniel, I'm not sure I'll ever forgive you, but no, I still love you. Those words cut and healed at once. I understood we were both wounded, but she was cracking the door open. I didn't know the answer. Every word seemed small for all the agony. We met in a small bistro by the Seine. Paris was rainy, gray, but there was poetry in it. Claire sat across, warming her hands on an espresso cup. Daniel, she said, understand how nightmarish this was for me. I waited for your support and you backed out. I know, I said, fighting the tremble in my voice. I wasn't prepared, and I know that's no excuse. I just panicked. She sighed, a tear glistened. Panicked, her tone shook. You know, my sister's death burned a hole in me, and now You left too, like it was nothing. I didn't leave, Claire. I tried to be honest, and I understand it sounds like a knife in the back. I looked down, but I love you, and it hurts from my guilt. We sat in silence under the rain's noise. I saw her expression change, the inner struggle tearing between love and resentment. Maybe, she said, we need a break to figure out desires. Maybe without the little one, maybe with her, but full forgiveness is in question. I nodded, accepting the truth. Sometimes love isn't about instant reunion. Sometimes it's about surviving the storm, even if it tears you apart. In the following weeks, communication was rare, each day like a test. Sometimes she sent texts, "Miss you, want to meet? Can't get what happened out of my head." I replied cautiously, afraid to ruin everything. And then one night, when Paris twinkled in the cold glow of lamps, I approached her house. She opened and we froze, looking at each other. "I'm not sure I'll forget this crack," she said, "but I want to try." "I do too, Claire," I replied, ready to fight for us, even if it means facing fears. We hugged, and then I understood our saga was just starting. We were both cracked, but choosing unity. It was our tiny chance for a fresh chapter, despite the agony, panic, and past. 7 days after that night, I noticed shifts. Claire became withdrawn, smiled less, gaze often drifted nowhere. I tried to be closer, but in joint moments felt a barrier. One evening I came back and found a letter on the table. No markings, just my name. Opened it, photos, old shots of Claire's sister, her childhood things, notes, memoirs, all laid out neatly. On the final page, inscription: "You think you grasp what refusing the little one means to me, but you're clueless. This isn't just a girl. It's sister, kin, my wound. Think before your next move." Heart clenched, knew this was her way to show I wasn't mature enough, but it was like a stiletto strike deeper. A few days later, she announced she wanted solitude, words soft but firm. "I need to figure myself out, without you." I argued, begged for a chance, shared emotions, but phrases evaporated. She closed off, and I understood our talks weren't healing but hurting. One evening I decided to walk along the Seine embankment, where we first dreamed of tomorrow. Paris wet from downpour, lights reflected in the river like myriad unreachable stars. Sitting on a bench, pondering how it all derailed. Then a call from her mother. Mrs. Brown was worried. "Daniel, Claire has insomnia. She barely eats, mood swings, says she feels betrayed, even by you." I froze, guilt tore me apart. Realized that with my words and refusal I broke more than the bond, broke a piece of her essence. Next morning I went to her, stood at the door shaking from nerves. When Claire opened, I saw exhaustion, eyes red from lack of sleep, hair messy, gaze empty. "Daniel," she whispered, "I don't know if I'll forgive." "I know," I replied. Words are weak but ready for anything to support, to save us. She pulled away, tears flowed. "You don't grasp, this isn't just about us. About kin preserving sister's memory, and you just cut no." Tears welled up, tried to explain. "Not no to you. I'm afraid to fail, to let down, but I want to be there to learn, to adapt." She looked and I caught a new fear in her eyes. Not losing me, but uncontrollable future. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I want to risk it, but need time. Can't just decide. This is bigger than us. Her memory, life, care, now in us." We agreed on distance. Every morning, short walks, chatter about trifles, laughter, memories, but the topic of the little one taboo. Both feared it. Weeks passed, Claire thawed. We cooked together, watched series, sometimes danced in the kitchen to favorite tracks, but the shadow hung. One evening, under the rain tapping windows, she sat closer. "I know my fear," she started, "but maybe we'll go through it together, not fast, not easy, but through." I nodded, squeezing her hands. "I'll be there, not just for us, but to understand you, her legacy, everything meaningful." And then I understood. Love isn't always ease and happiness. Sometimes fear, pain, questions. Love is choosing to hold on when the world crumbles and propping each other in horror. I'm still in shock that this happened. Everything we built with Claire, fragile but real, suddenly on the edge, and maybe irreparably. Almost 4 months have passed since the try again. Seemed balance was found. Walks by the Seine, cozy evenings, small joys. But the shadow of the sister's daughter loomed like a wall. One evening Claire called with a trembling tone. "Daniel, need to tell you, and don't be mad, please." Heart pounded, we did scary talks, but this stood out. What? I asked, steadying my voice. Mom decided that I must take guardianship of sister's daughter, said it's my duty. I froze. Guardianship and duty sounded like a verdict. I'm not sure, Claire. I started. You know I didn't say no out of spite, afraid I can't handle it. I know, Daniel, she whispered, but this is final, decided I must. We met in the usual cafe on the Champs-Élysées. Paris cold, drizzle, streets empty. Saw her eyes, determination with confusion. Daniel, I love you, she said quietly. But if you're not ready for the little one, then probably we'll part. Inside, everything nodded. Love versus reality. Claire's voice broke. I love you more than life, but can't lie, can't give vows I'll break. She nodded, tears on cheeks. I understand, she said. It hurts, thought we'd stand together. We were silent, looking. Understood, love sometimes doesn't save. Sometimes acknowledging incompatibility despite desires. Next morning we parted. Claire moved to her mom's, preparing for guardianship. I alone in the apartment, amid echoes, photos, souvenirs, her blanket on the chair. Weeks passed, tried to move on, but pain burned. Every day reminded of loss. Kept notes, dug into myself, dissected fears. One day wrote Claire, letter without claims. Claire, know I'll always keep us in my heart. Respect your choice and strength. Hope for your happiness even without me. Daniel. Sent, not expecting reply. A way to let go, accept that love is allowing paths, even destructive ones. A month later learned Claire took guardianship. Rare texts, the little one is her world, joy and pain. Understood she was right for herself, for me, end of the saga. Learned the lesson, honesty and admitting limits is also love. Not fairy tale, not joyful, but authentic. And here I am, Reddit sharing. So you know, strong emotions don't always conquer barriers. Real tragedy isn't betrayal, but unpreparedness for life's challenges. So I'm alone, but with a clear conscience. Heart in shards, but I didn't betray Claire or myself.